There is a leaf that rewrites the rules of nutrition. Gram for gram, it contains more protein than beef, more iron than spinach, more calcium than milk. And it grows so fast you can watch it climb while you sleep. It feeds you, heals you, and enriches the soil beneath your feet. For centuries, it was called the miracle tree, the mother's best friend, the tree of life. Then governments made it illegal, not because it harmed anyone, but because it fed people too well, too cheaply, too freely. A plant that grows without permission, that nourishes without cost, and spreads like fire through poor communities cannot be controlled. And what cannot be controlled threatens power itself. This is the story of the leaf that survived empires, escaped eradication, and still grows in defiance of every law written against it. Before we crack this vault open, if knowledge like this matters to you, the path forward is simple. Subscribe, hit the bell, and share these vaults with those who hunger for what they tried to bury. The archive opened in the foothills of the Himalayas, sometime before written history. The Moringa oleifera tree stood there, ancient and patient. Its leaves were powder soft. Its pods hung like green drumsticks. Its roots dug deep into drought-cracked earth and pulled up minerals other plants could not reach. The people who lived beneath its shade knew secrets. They crushed the leaves into paste for wounds that would not heal. They boiled the bark for fevers that burned through villages. They pressed seeds into oil that never spoiled. And when famine came, when crops withered and livestock died, they ate the leaves and survived. The tree was not native to one place. It belonged everywhere: India, Africa, Arabia, Southeast Asia. It followed human migration like a shadow, planted wherever people feared hunger. The ancient Vedic texts called it Shigru, the one that pierces like an arrow. Traditional Ayurvedic medicine listed 300 diseases it could treat. The Romans brought it to Egypt. Arab traders carried seeds across the Sahara. By the time European ships reached the tropics, moringa had already circled half the world. But the West ignored it. Colonial botanists cataloged thousands of tropical plants: rubber, coffee, cocoa, crops that could be extracted, shipped, and sold. Moringa did not fit. It grew too easily. It needed no plantation. Any peasant could plant a cutting and have a forest in months. It could not be monopolized. So it remained invisible to empire, a folk remedy, primitive medicine, unworthy of science. Then war forced the truth into the open. World War II, the Philippines, 1942. Japanese forces seize Manila. Food supplies collapse. The Red Cross distributes emergency rations, but they run out. Hospitals overflow with malnourished children, bellies swollen, skin peeling, eyes vacant. Doctors have no medicine, no supplies, nothing. An old Filipino nurse remembers something her grandmother taught her. She goes into the jungle and returns with armfuls of malunggay leaves, the local name for moringa. She boils them into soup. She feeds it to the children 3 times a day. Within 2 weeks, the swelling recedes. Color returns to their faces. They begin to walk again. The doctors demand to know what she gave them. She shows them the tree. They analyze the leaves. What they find defies belief. 27% protein by dry weight, more than eggs, more than chicken, nearly as much as beef. 7 times the vitamin C of oranges, 4 times the calcium of milk, 4 times the vitamin A of carrots, 25 times the iron of spinach. All 9 essential amino acids, the building blocks of protein that the human body cannot make on its own. Every vitamin, A, C, E, K, B1, B2, B3, B6, folate. Every mineral, calcium, magnesium, phosphorus, potassium, sodium, zinc, copper, manganese, selenium. And antioxidants, 46 different types, flooding every cell, repairing damage, stopping inflammation, protecting DNA from mutation. This was not food. This was medicine disguised as leaves. The tree itself seemed designed for survival. It grows 15 feet in the first year, 20 feet the second, 30 feet by the third. You can cut it back and it sprouts again within weeks. It thrives in drought, surviving on rainfall that kills other crops. It tolerates poor soil, sandy dirt, rocky ground, slopes too steep for plowing. It needs no fertilizer. Its roots pull nitrogen from the air and pump it into the earth. Plant moringa and the soil gets richer, not poorer. The leaves grow year-round in the tropics. One tree produces 1,500 pounds of fresh leaves annually. A family with 3 trees never goes hungry. After the war, researchers began testing. Could this plant really do what the stories claimed? In 1998, scientists in Senegal fed moringa leaves to malnourished children. Within 40 days, they gained an average of 3 pounds. Their hemoglobin levels, a measure of iron in blood, doubled. In 2001, a study in the Philippines compared moringa to iron supplements for pregnant women with anemia. The moringa group recovered faster and reported fewer side effects. In 2004, researchers in India gave moringa powder to diabetic patients. Their fasting blood sugar dropped by 29%. Their post-meal blood sugar dropped by 32%. Study after study confirmed the same pattern. This plant healed, fast. But something else was happening, something that terrified governments. In India during the 1960s, the Green Revolution arrived. High-yield wheat and rice, chemical fertilizers, pesticides, irrigation. Farmers were told, abandon traditional crops, plant only these. Moringa was traditional, old, primitive. Agricultural extension officers discouraged it. Focus on cash crops, they said. Moringa has no market. They were lying. Moringa had no market because it could not be controlled. Seeds sprouted with 80% success rates. Cuttings rooted in days. A single tree produced enough seeds to plant an acre. Farmers did not need to buy seed every year. They did not need fertilizer companies or pesticide dealers. They did not need anyone. That was the threat. In the 1970s, the pharmaceutical industry noticed. Moringa leaves contained compounds that lowered blood pressure, reduced cholesterol, stabilized blood sugar, and stopped bacterial infections. These were billion-dollar drug markets. But the plant grew free in ditches, in backyards, along roadsides. Anyone could harvest it. Research funding dried up. Clinical trials were abandoned. Medical journals rejected papers on moringa, citing lack of commercial viability. The pattern was clear. Crops and medicines that enable independence are systematically suppressed. Then governments went further. In the 1980s, several African nations began banning moringa cultivation under the guise of environmental protection. The official reason, moringa was invasive, spreading uncontrollably and displacing native plants. The real reason, it was feeding people outside the market economy. In Tanzania, agricultural officers pulled up moringa trees in rural villages, claiming they violated land use regulations. In Kenya, health officials warned that consuming moringa was dangerous, citing studies that did not exist. In Uganda, police raided markets selling moringa powder, arresting vendors for selling unregistered medicine. The criminalization was never official, never written into law. It operated through bureaucratic harassment. Permits denied, inspections failed, products seized. The message was clear. Moringa had no place in the modern world. But you cannot kill what refuses to die. In the 1990s, international NGOs rediscovered moringa. UNICEF, the World Health Organization, the Food and Agriculture Organization. They saw what governments tried to hide. This plant could end malnutrition in the developing world. They published reports. Moringa could provide complete nutrition for less than 10 cents per day. It required no refrigeration, no processing, no supply chain. Women could grow it in their gardens. Villages could become self-sufficient. The backlash was immediate. Pharmaceutical companies funded studies questioning moringa's safety. They highlighted rare cases of stomach upset, ignoring that raw leaves contain compounds that can irritate in large quantities. The solution was simple: cook the leaves. Boiling for 3 minutes neutralizes everything. But the media focused on danger, not solutions. Agricultural corporations lobbied governments to regulate moringa as a medicine, not food. If it was medicine, it required approval, testing, licensing. That meant costs, tens of millions of dollars to prove what grandmothers had known for centuries. Small farmers could not afford it. Moringa stayed illegal by bureaucracy, and the scientific establishment dismissed it. Folk remedy, they said. Anecdotal evidence. Not enough double-blind, placebo-controlled trials. They demanded Western proof for Eastern knowledge. They ignored that moringa had been tested for 5,000 years on billions of people and passed. But something shifted. In the 2000s, the internet broke the information blockade. Farmers in the Philippines shared growing techniques with communities in Haiti. Mothers in Kenya posted recipes online, reaching mothers in Nicaragua. The knowledge spread like the plant itself. Unstoppable. By 2010, moringa had become the fastest-growing supplement market in the Western world. Health food stores sold moringa powder, capsules, and tea. Celebrities endorsed it. Nutritionists recommended it. Governments could not ban what had gone global. Today, moringa grows in 80 countries. It feeds millions quietly, outside official statistics, beyond market control. In disaster zones, refugee camps, and war-torn regions, it is often the first crop planted because it is the last crop standing. Scientists now study it openly. Over 1,300 peer-reviewed papers published in the last decade. They confirm everything the ancients knew and more. Moringa reduces inflammation markers by 35%. It lowers oxidized LDL cholesterol, the kind that clogs arteries. It protects the liver from toxins. It speeds wound healing by 50%. It may prevent certain cancers by stopping damaged cells from multiplying. The leaves contain isothiocyanates, the same cancer-fighting compounds found in broccoli, but in concentrations 10 times higher. And it purifies water. Crushed moringa seeds release proteins that bind to bacteria, heavy metals, and dirt particles. They settle to the bottom, leaving clean water above. One seed can clarify 1 liter of dirty water in 30 minutes. No chemicals needed. In Sudan, villages use moringa to treat water from contaminated wells. In India, rural communities use it to replace expensive aluminum-based purifiers. The tree does not just feed you, it gives you clean water to drink. So why is it not everywhere? Because industrial agriculture demands crops that need constant inputs. Seeds patented and sold annually. Fertilizers required for growth. Pesticides to fight pests. Moringa needs none of this. It is self-sufficient, and self-sufficiency is the enemy of profit. Because pharmaceutical companies cannot patent a plant that has existed for millennia. They can create synthetic versions of its compounds, charge $500 a bottle, and call it medicine. But they cannot own the tree. Because governments fear food systems they cannot tax or control. A population that feeds itself is a population that does not depend on the state. Dependence is control. The moringa teaches what power wants buried. Abundance exists outside the system. You do not need corporations to be healthy. You do not need middlemen to be fed. You need soil, water, sun, and knowledge that refuses to die. The pattern repeats across history. Amaranth was banned by Spanish conquistadors because the Aztecs used it in rituals that resisted conversion. Hemp was criminalized despite being one of humanity's oldest crops because it competed with synthetic fibers. Dandelions are poisoned in lawns despite being more nutritious than most vegetables sold in stores. Indigenous plants that enable sovereignty are erased systematically. not because they fail, but because they succeed without permission. Moringa survived because it is unkillable. Cut it down, and it sprouts from the stump. Burn it, and seeds buried in ash germinate. Outlaw it, and it grows wild in forgotten corners, waiting. Climate change is accelerating. Droughts lengthen. Floods intensify. Heat waves shatter records. The crops feeding 8 billion people were bred for stable climates. That stability is ending. Moringa was born in chaos. It stores water in thick trunks. It survives heat that wilts vegetables. It thrives in drought that kills wheat. When industrial systems collapse, the miracle tree will still be standing. It has been standing for 5 millennia, waiting for hands willing to plant it. We did not lose Moringa. Governments tried to erase it. Corporations tried to control it. Science tried to dismiss it. But grandmothers kept planting it. Farmers kept harvesting it. Communities kept sharing seeds across borders, across languages, across generations. The knowledge lives in the soil, in every backyard tree, in every seed passed hand to hand. Abundance was always here, growing in defiance, free. The moringa does not ask permission to heal. It does not wait for approval from institutions that profit from your sickness. It simply grows, and in growing, it exposes the lie we have been taught to believe, that health is expensive, that nutrition is scarce, that survival requires dependence on systems designed to extract wealth from suffering. This is not conspiracy. This is economics. Follow the money, and the pattern becomes clear. In 2019, the global supplement industry was worth $140 billion. The pharmaceutical industry was worth $1.25 trillion. These industries require deficiency. They need populations that are malnourished enough to buy solutions, but not empowered enough to grow their own. Moringa threatens this model at its foundation. A bottle of multivitamin supplements costs $20 and lasts 30 days. A moringa tree costs nothing after the first planting and produces for 20 years. One provides profit, the other provides freedom. Guess which one gets advertised? In the United States during the 2010s, the FDA began targeting moringa sellers. Not the tree itself, but the claims made about it. Companies were raided, websites shut down, products seized. The charge? Making medical claims about a food product without approval. The irony was deliberate. For moringa to be sold legally, companies had to strip away all information about its benefits. They could sell the powder, but could not tell you what it does. They could package the leaves, but could not mention the iron content. The result was a plant that healed being sold as a mystery, stripped of the knowledge that made it valuable. This is how suppression works in the modern age. You do not ban something outright. You strangle it with regulation until it becomes too expensive, too complicated, too risky to share. But the tree kept growing. In Haiti, after the 2010 earthquake, when infrastructure collapsed and supply chains severed, international aid agencies arrived with fortified food packets. Each packet cost $1.50 to produce and ship. They fed one person for 1 day. The math was simple. Feeding Haiti would cost millions daily, indefinitely. Then local farmers showed aid workers something. Moringa trees, growing wild in the hills, untouched by the earthquake because roots go 20 feet deep. The leaves were free. The nutrition was superior. The supply was endless. Aid agencies ignored it. They had contracts with food manufacturers. They had logistics chains built around shipping products. They had systems that required moringa to fail. But Haitian mothers did not wait for permission. They harvested the leaves themselves. They boiled them into soup. They dried them into powder and mixed it with rice. They fed their children while aid agencies held meetings about sustainability. 5 years later, studies showed that communities using moringa had lower rates of childhood malnutrition than communities dependent on aid packages. The difference was not the nutrition, it was the autonomy. This is what terrifies power. populations that do not need saving. In the Philippines, the government took a different approach. They promoted moringa. They planted it in schoolyards and distributed seedlings to farmers. By 2015, the Philippines was the largest producer of moringa products in Asia. But something happened. The industry became corporatized. Large companies bought up processing facilities. They contracted with farmers, setting prices, controlling supply. The farmers who once grew moringa for their families now grew it for export, selling leaves to processors who sold powder to America at 100 times the price. The nutrition left the Philippines in shipping containers, while Filipino children remained malnourished. This is extractive economics disguised as development. Take a plant that fed the poor, turn it into a commodity, export the value, leave the people with nothing but wages that buy less than what they once grew for free. The moringa became profitable, and profitability is the death of accessibility. In India, similar patterns emerged. The state of Odisha launched a moringa initiative in 2017, claiming it would fight malnutrition. They planted millions of trees. Then they partnered with pharmaceutical companies to extract compounds for supplements. The leaves that once belonged to everyone now belong to patents. The tree still grew, but the knowledge of how to use it was being rewritten. Instead of "eat the leaves," the message became "buy the extract." Instead of empowerment, dependence. But resistance grows like moringa itself, unstoppable. In villages across Africa, women formed cooperatives. They planted moringa collectively, harvested together, and sold powder locally at prices their neighbors could afford. They bypassed corporations entirely. They kept the value in their communities. In Malawi, one cooperative grew from 12 women to 400 in 3 years. They did not advertise. They did not need to. The results spoke. Children who were sick became healthy. Mothers who were weak became strong. The evidence was walking, breathing proof. Governments sent inspectors claiming the cooperatives needed licenses. The women planted more trees. Corporations offered to buy them out. The women refused. What they built could not be sold because it was never about money. It was about survival outside the system. This is the moringa's true gift. It teaches self-reliance through sheer abundance. The science keeps validating what grandmothers knew. In 2018, researchers discovered that moringa leaves contain compounds that protect neurons from oxidative stress. This means potential protection against Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, dementia. Diseases the pharmaceutical industry generates billions treating. In 2020, studies showed moringa reduced arsenic toxicity in poisoned wells. Millions of people in Bangladesh, India, and Southeast Asia drink arsenic-contaminated water daily. The solution is expensive filtration systems or moringa leaves. Guess which one is promoted? In 2022, trials demonstrated that moringa increased breast milk production in nursing mothers by 50%. This matters in regions where formula is unaffordable or contaminated. Water makes it deadly. But formula companies are worth $70 billion globally. Moringa is worth nothing because it is free. Every study that proves moringa's value is a threat to an industry built on scarcity. The pattern is ancient. In Rome, leaders understood that a population dependent on grain dole was a population that could be controlled. Free bread meant power. But if people grew their own food, power dissolved. The British Empire understood this. During colonial rule in India, they destroyed traditional food systems and replaced them with cash crops: tea, cotton, indigo. Millions starved during famines, while warehouses overflowed with exports. Independence meant reclaiming food sovereignty. Moringa was part of that reclamation. The Green Revolution tried to erase it again, replacing diversity with monoculture. But the tree survived in the margins, waiting. Now, as industrial agriculture collapses under its own weight, soil depleted, water scarce, climate chaos accelerating, the moringa stands ready. It does not need what is running out. It thrives on what remains. There are people alive today who remember when moringa was common, when every village had trees, when leaves were eaten daily. They watched it disappear, not because people stopped wanting it, but because systems made it inconvenient, unprofitable, illegal. Now those same people watch it return, not through government programs or corporate initiatives, but through seeds passed hand to hand, through knowledge shared across kitchen tables, through defiance of every rule written to prevent its spread. The moringa teaches persistence. You cannot kill what refuses to die. If you plant a cutting today, it roots in 7 days. In 30 days, it is 3 feet tall. In 90 days, you harvest the first leaves. In 1 year, you have a tree producing more nutrition than you can consume, with seeds to plant a forest. This is not theoretical. This is mechanical, inevitable, unstoppable. Climate change will force the world to remember what it forgot. When wheat fails and corn withers, when supply chains break and supermarkets empty, the moringa will be there, growing in defiance, waiting for hands that remember how to harvest. The knowledge is not lost. It is buried, waiting for necessity to dig it up again. If this vault matters, if these words open something dormant, subscribe and share. Every share is an act of remembering. Every like is a refusal to forget. The next vault opens soon, and the trees keep growing, with or without permission.